I had been trying to survive and just survive my illness for so long that when I became well, I didn't have the skills, yet I had kids already there. It was like I was born with triplets all of a sudden, but not any skill set. And so I spent 3 years diving in and really fell in love with how much freedom I got from setting up these systems and these infrastructure within my home. I had so much time that blossomed out of it. And then I had to learn, what do I want to do with my time?
Welcome to the Solve for Mom podcast. Do you love spending family time together every day, but realize that your own interests have fallen to the wayside? Do you have a long list of things you wish to learn, but you're so tired from trying to balance it all on your own and frustrated from not planning ahead to make it happen? Have you been mom for so long that you've lost track of who you are as an individual? Hi, I'm Anoki. I'm a PhD biomedical researcher, homeschooling mom, and life coach. I too poured myself into being a mom and thought I had to stop doing the things that I love to do. I was struggling to make time for myself, had lost my sense of direction, and kept second-guessing myself. I wanted to take back control of my purpose and passions, but I kept telling myself there'll be plenty of time for that later. Until I did what was natural to me. Using the methods of a scientist, I created plans to prioritize my values, organize my time, and take action towards my goals. If you're ready to go questing for your purpose, level up your learning, and confidently pursue your passions while still being the awesome mama that you are, you're in the right place. In this complex equation we call life, it's time to sharpen our pencils and our minds and solve for mom. Hello to all of you moms out there. This is episode 28 of the Solve for Mom podcast. I'm your host, Anoki Kapasi. Before we start, I want to make sure that you tap the follow button by subscribing to the show. It'll appear on your playlist automatically every week, and you'll save yourself a lot of time instead of hunting down the episodes. Okay, now back to the show. So I have a very special treat for you guys. I have our very first interview onto the show, and my guest today is an extremely empowering woman who has an inspirational story to share. Her unique approach to combining positivity with intentionality is so impressive. And the best part is that we can all access her method because she runs a business that educates other moms in her philosophy. I'm talking, of course, about Aubree Felderhoff, host on her highly ranked self-improvement podcast called Mom Intentional. Aubree is a mom of 3 boys, a professional organizer, and a time management specialist for moms. After overcoming a life-altering chronic illness, she rebuilt her approach to motherhood and home management using simple systems and routines. Now, she helps overwhelmed moms take control of their time and home with practical strategies that actually work. As the host of Mom Intentional podcast and founder of the Mom Intentional Club Facebook group, she empowers moms to ditch the chaos and create a thriving, intentional life. Guys, I can't wait for you to hear from her. Welcome on, Aubree.
Thank you so much, Anoki. I'm so excited to be here.
Thanks for being here. I mentioned this offline already, but you're marking a bit of a momentous occasion for us on this podcast because you're our very first guest. So this is super exciting.
Yes, I am super, super honored to be on your podcast as the first guest because I'm a big fan of yours and I've been listening to your podcast for a while and I love it. So I'm just feeling so extra honored today.
I know I have something to reveal, but I don't want it to sound creepy. I feel like I've been podcast stalking you because, guys, if you haven't seen Aubree's podcast cover art, it is so gorgeous. She has these very inviting colors. It's so welcoming. Every time I see it, I'm like, wow, I need to be like this. I need to be energetic and smiley. And so if you haven't checked out her podcast, you should definitely do that. And I'll put all the information in the show notes and let her put in a little plug at the end as well.
Oh, well, thank you. That is so sweet.
Okay, I have so many questions I want to ask you. But before I ask you my first one, I just wanted to see if there's anything else that you wanted to add to your introduction about yourself.
Yeah. Well, I am a Texas girl, born and raised Texas, and I have 3 boys. I'm a boy mom just like you. My boys are 12, 11, and 7. And I have 2 dogs, Mr. Pickles and Grandpa Joe, and 4 chickens on our little neighborhood backyard. And yeah, I think that's it. You summed me up well.
That's awesome. So do you live in a city or suburban town, but you are kind of partially homesteading, it sounds like?
Very, very slight. Yes, we're in in a city, but we are a little bit more spread out in our backyards. And technically, nobody knows that I have chickens, so it's fine, except our neighbors. We give them eggs. So that's kind of the trade-off.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I keep eyeing chicken coops. I don't know why, because we cannot have one here, but I just really want one. Ah, you're living the life. Anyway, so I'm actually gonna just start by getting to the meat of it because I have so many questions and I'm just like, I need to get straight to this so I can get as much out of Aubree as is possible in this time. So I was wondering, what is the biggest mistake that moms make with time management in your experience?
Oh gosh. Well, I think I've probably made every single one possible. So I can speak from a lot of experience in the mistake world. I know one thing that I really struggled with was too high of an expectation on my time. So wanting to get every single thing on my list done and then feeling almost as if I had failed as soon as I realized that it wasn't possible. And I really had to learn how to work around that with some strategies and to have a better understanding on how much time things actually take. I think as moms, there's so much invisible work in our lives that we don't give credit for. We say, I don't know what I did all day at the end of the day, but we didn't take into account the loads of laundry we were doing and the meals that we were prepping and the meals that we were cleaning and the bathroom accident and the clogged toilet and the cleaning and the planning for the birthday party and then making the appointment. Those are all things that it falls on our shoulders that we're doing and juggling along with rearing our children and being a spouse and taking care of ourselves, but they don't visibly show time. It's not the
Yeah.
same as when you work out, you know that you might go and exercise for an hour. We tend to look at the time that takes, but we don't look at the time it takes to do all of these what I call invisible tasks. And so at the end of the day, we have done so much, but we don't write down all of the things that are just second nature to us. I think that
Hmm.
was probably one of the biggest things I learned when I kind of dove into starting my understanding of time management as a mom.
Oh, that's such a good point. Yeah. I remember trying to put my finger on those things. I call them squishy tasks because
Yeah,
you spend the time. I'm used to doing something like I've made something or something has been completed, right? Some of these things, there's nothing for you to say, hey, look at what's happened now because I spent that time. Sometimes it feels like our entire day is a bunch of those things, right? Invisible tasks,
absolutely.
like you said. Yeah. Actually, let's take a step back and maybe you can tell me how you came to be an expert in time saving home management systems.
Yeah. So when I was a beginner mom, my first two boys are 17 months apart. So I had my first son, we had moved, and after I had my second son, just a little less than a year later, I got really sick. And my second son was also very sick. And that kind of started a 7-year journey of me battling a chronic illness that was kind of a mystery. I went through 31 doctors. Nobody knew what was wrong with me. I had just the most random and awful symptoms. And so I had all of these different diagnoses, but nothing fixed the problem. Eventually, God gave me a miracle and I was healed. It did require that we move from our home and kind of start from scratch in a home with nothing. And I thought that once I got there and healed, that I would stop living in that survival mode because when I was chronically ill, my whole goal was to survive. Truly, just in the physical sense, I was trying to just stay alive. And once I moved, I realized and got well, I realized that I was still in survival mode and I was no longer chronically ill. I was well and I had energy and I had 3 kids at the time, but I had no systems or structure set up in my house to run my house effectively and efficiently. And so I was still flying by the seat of my pants and felt as if I was drowning, yet I wasn't sick. And that really hit me that you can be overwhelmed in many different ways and in many different stages of motherhood. And if you don't have the systems and the structure set up in the background to help you, you're going to stay trapped in that reactive mode. And so
Mm.
from there, I started working on doing classes and courses and certifications. And I spent about 3 years getting educations and certifications and really learning, I like to say, learning how to be a mom because I had been trying to survive and just survive my illness for so long that when I became well, I didn't have the skills, yet I had kids already there. It was like I was born with triplets all of a sudden, but not any skill set. And so I spent 3 years diving in and really fell in love with how much freedom I got from setting up these systems and these infrastructure within my home, I had so much time that blossomed out of it. And then I had to learn, what do I want to do with my time? And
Mhm.
that's really how I learned about being intentional. My whole goal was to make the most with my boys, make the most with my time with my boys, because I felt almost as if I had lost so much time when I was ill, not being there, not being the mom I wanted to be. And then once I got well, I was so busy trying to set up a home and set up a system for our schedule and our life that I still didn't feel like I was being the intentional mom I wanted. And so that's really how Mom Intentional was born, is recognizing that so many mamas are overwhelmed, whether they're sick or there's a death or there's multiple children or they're just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I seem to live there for so long. I wanted to help moms begin to set those systems and the infrastructure up and not waste any more time living in reaction mode and letting that time get away from them.
Wow. Yes, you said, not all of us necessarily have gone to the extreme health challenges that you had. I think it's just still such a relatable story. I was also thinking when I have systems and plans in place, like you said, I'm able to focus on my health more too. So even if I may start off from a fit or healthy spot, when systems aren't intact, your mental and your physical well-being suffers too. And maybe not a life-threatening condition, but I think we can all kind of learn from your story that there's two parts, your body and just your sanity. So when you started implementing these systems, did you kind of do it all in one go, or did you have sort of a plan for your plan?
I learn a lot by failure. So I kind of dove head in. I really was so desperate to not lose any more time with my family. And
Mhm.
that's kind of how I viewed my life as, oh my gosh, I lost so much time. I did the best I could, but I really was trying to survive and not being the mom that I knew I could be. So I dove head in, and some things worked and some things didn't. But either way, I learned, and then I changed kind of our approach. And even to this day, I feel like I have a pretty good ironed out system that works for the most part. But, everybody is different. Every family is different. Even within our family, every child is different. And even to this day, one of my sons came to me and told me how thankful he was that I changed we're a soccer family, and he has an area, we have an area in my kids' dressers for all of their sports equipment. And so on game day, they could just go straight, get all of their stuff on. It's all in one spot. They know where it is. But this particular child, the spot was not working for him. And so he was not returning his washed
Mhm.
uniform and socks to that spot. And we kept losing it. And so I decided he needed it to be more out in the open. And yeah, it's not my favorite thing. It's not as pretty. It's not
Mhm.
as aesthetically pleasing, but
Mhm.
I literally got a box and labeled it with a chalk marker soccer, and it has no lid, and it's on the floor of his closet. And he came to me and told me how thankful he was that I changed that for him and how excited he was to use that and how all the soccer stuff was already there. So, we're still changing. People are different. Every family is different. Every child is different. The box system works for him and not for my other
Mhm.
two. I think it's a continual process, but just to have some basis to go off of and then tweak as you grow and as your family changes, it really does relieve so much pressure and so
Mhm.
much of that need to constantly be on edge trying to react and find the shin guards
Mhm.
and find all the things, just to
Mhm.
have something kind of in the back pocket that's doing all of the heavy lifting for you.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So it's not really a one and done type situation. You're always improving and refining these systems. And I think that as your kids grow and your family grows, there's an evolution to the whole process. You do a lot of trial and error, and we know with trial and error, it's basically you get a bunch of things wrong in order for you to figure out what's right. Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
I lived in that world for a long time with in the laboratory. It's interesting. You're basically what you're talking about is motherhood being this one big experiment and your systems and your home being that as well. So I can certainly relate. So I actually don't think I knew that somebody could be a time management specialist. I'm not really actually sure I fully understand what that is. I just want to find out from you what that pertains and what types of things do you advise as a time management specialist?
Yeah, so time is really my passion because, of my history of feeling as if so much had seeped through my fingers. And I really recognized long ago that out of all the resources that God gave us on this earth, time is the only thing we can never make more of. We can always have more money. We can always make more food, get more things. But time, it's once it's gone, it's gone. And when I realized that after 7 years of kind of living in this blurry, underwater type feeling, I recognized that the time with my boys when they were little was gone. And the only way that I could kind of reconcile that was to make the most of what was left because every moment was slipping. And so my goal with the moms I work with now is just helping them to make the most out of the time they have, to really utilize every inch of it. And I want that to not come off as we're some sort of militant structured, every single moment must count on. I don't mean it like that. I just mean if you're not aware of your time and your life and your path, then you're going to end up drifting through life. And I know that that's where so many of us are, especially in I call it the middle messy of motherhood, right? That's kind of where I am now. I'm out of the baby age, but I'm in the middleness where we are so busy. And if I am not very aware of what I'm doing with my time, I can find that days or weeks could go by and I have just kind of responded in reaction mode again. And it's my passion to help moms not get stuck there. Because when you get stuck there, you can tend to feel the pressure of just the overwhelming demands of everything that's coming at you and not knowing where your safety boat is. Like, how do I get out of this? There's so much. I would love to be, more intentional and have time for myself and have time for each kid individually and have time for my spouse. But how do you do that? I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so bogged down with all of these life responsibilities. I have lived that. And I know so many of us have. And so that's kind of where time management formed a love in my heart.
Well, when I was referring to was I became aware of sort of time management in the realm of running project in consulting and in business and things like that. And so is there something specific that you use in terms of time management during your mom life, your personal life, that might be different than what most of us deal with in our professional lives?
Sure. Yeah. So a real practical tip that I like to give the moms that I work with is starring your top three priorities for the day. So I use time blocking. I use it different than I think society teaches us. I use a very simplified version with my mamas. And within those, we only have 3 blocks. And within those blocks, we start our top three priorities. So I do have a work block that I know what I need to get done, my top three for the day. But during my kid block, I have the same three-starred priorities of what are my top three things. And it's not always just roses and games. There's definitely the intentional aspect, but maybe it's also my oldest son is in middle school and he had his first dance and he wanted me to go buy him an outfit to go shopping with him to help him pick out a certain outfit. And so that was one of my starred things last week that I knew that I was going to do that was intentional, that needed to be done that day, in that time period to be intentional. Now, of course, there are times that we can't always get to all three. But the beautiful thing about tracking that is it stays on the list and I can bump it to the next day. Eventually it will get done. But that has really helped me to make sure that I'm being intentional and getting the top priorities done rather than just fixing another toy where the batteries went out and running around like a chicken with my head cut off, doing all the things. And then at the end of the day saying, oh, I didn't get to my workout or I didn't get to that doesn't happen anymore because my top three priorities are always accomplished within that time block.
Yeah, that's really great. Instead of kind of working off a to-do list, you just have maybe a priority list almost. And these are things that are really important to you. What I found really awesome about this process that you're describing is that it led to your child inviting you into this milestone moment for him, right? That because he knows that you're going to make him a priority, that I think your kids are starting to probably get trained as to what does mom consider priorities in her life, because they see you over and over showing up for certain things in a greater way than some of these other things like changing batteries, like you said. So, and I think because of that, your children will invite you into these moments because they know that you're going to be there. So that's really something that I hope happens with my kids. So
I'm sure it will.
I think what I come across a lot when I'm talking to women in my community is with working. A lot of them are work at home moms, and they're just like you in that messy middle. And our messy is can be different from mom to mom, right? It's just a lot of chaos. And so, where should a mom start? Because your plan sounds so systematic and simple, which is what I love. It's so accessible. But how do you even start with this? And it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be specifically to your time blocking, but in general, when you're just life is chaotic.
Oh, it's tough. It's so tough. I think one of the top things that I have worked a lot on with the moms in my community is you have to have a central place for all of those thoughts and those demands and those triggering, oh my gosh, I forgot to do this, things that hit your brain, when
Mhm.
you're trying to fall asleep. You have to have a central place for all of that to go. And then you have to train yourself not to do it until you have planned on doing it. So I have a running date with myself every week. I call it my Friday prep time, and it's on my calendar, and it's as important to me as church. I mean, it is a top priority. Speaking of priorities, it's up there because without that, I lose my ability to be intentional. But
Mhm.
if I know that every week at the same time I am coming sitting down and I'm going through everything that is on my list. I keep a list on my phone as the stuff is coming into my head. And I've also trained my family
Mhm.
to respect my Friday prep. And so when they do have a toy with a battery, or they need more toothpaste, or they need permission slips signed for their field trip next week, it all goes into my Friday prep basket that I keep in a certain area.
Mhm.
They no longer tell me about it. It's just there. They might write a note on whatever it is, but it all goes there. I pull it out on my scheduled time. I go through it. I sort it. I do the things that need to be taken care of immediately then. But I am in that frame of mind and I have time to do it then. And anything that doesn't need to be taken care of, perhaps it's a birthday party invitation that is for a month from now. I just set it back in there and it's safely in there until the next week when I have my appointment. And then I can handle it. And so that helps me to kind of punt what's not important and only focus on what is important. And if I don't have time to do it right then, I will then schedule it into one of my top three priorities for my schedule in the following week, knowing that I'll get it done. And so that has really helped me to jump off of that reactive train
Mhm.
and start to embrace more of calmness because I have a
Mhm.
place for all those ideas and those thoughts and those needs to go. And it keeps me able to focus on what is in front of me during the week.
That makes a lot of sense. I have a notebook where I just need to get it out of my head and I'll address it later, and I call it a scatter book. What really strikes me as you talk about this, and I think we all kind of have our own systems, what you're describing is a very intentional process. I think a lot of my moms can really benefit from this idea. But what really strikes me is that while you are planning and you are very intentional with your time, it's not so rigorous and structured that you can't have some flexibility in there. Like if you choose not to do something, or if something else unexpected comes up, you still have a system for the unplanned, which is often where a lot of people struggle. It's finding the rhythm, right? Like they want a rhythm, but then when something needs to be changed, it's like, wait, that's not the plan. What do I do? And so I like that you have this very low stress, like it's organized enough to accomplish everything you need to accomplish. But when you choose or something has to move over to another day, it's not filled with angst. And so that really, speaks to me.
Yeah, I think, as moms, one of the top mistakes I've seen with women that I've coached is when we try to set a schedule that is just, first of all, full to the brim. Every minute is accounted for, and we're going to be productive here, here, and here. A, it's not attainable, but B, we simply forget as moms that nothing goes as planned. Truly. I mean, there's always some wrench that goes in the plan. We may have the perfect day scheduled and then our kid throws up at school and it's
Yeah.
over. And it's never going to go as planned. And what I've learned in my life is that if you are expecting everything to go as planned, you're setting yourself up for failure because and then you get frustrated. That used to happen to me. I would get so frustrated when things didn't go as planned and it would completely throw me off of my schedule and my goals and my plans. Now I've learned to plan for the unplannable events because that is a
Yeah.
part of life. We can't get angry that someone got sick or be so surprised that our car broke down. Like these things happen. And so having all of these systems in our house set up and an infrastructure set up to support us gives us the flexibility and the peace of mind when that stuff happens to roll with the punches, which is what we need as a mom. And
Yeah.
believe me, I love structure and I'm a very
Mhm.
type A personality, and that was a hard lesson for me to learn. But just learning that and finding systems that supported that frame of mind has really been such a blessing for my family and my own headspace.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And so I just hope that people are listening to this because I have spoken on this too, but it's really great to get another angle and perspective on this. But I think that when we're planning and we're building systems for those creatives out there or people out there who love spontaneity, they think, oh, that takes all the fun out of it because, I don't like to have this rigorous schedule to follow where everything is planned out and I can't throw in a bunch of spontaneity. Honestly, by having it planned, especially using such a simple system that you're suggesting, it actually brings you more freedom because now you don't have to worry, oh, I still have to get this, that, or the other done because I set Friday prep aside to do that. And so you can fully put your mind towards using that time for something else. It actually brings you more freedom not just with your time, but also with being spontaneous and things like that. So I really encourage people out there, it doesn't really matter what system you use, but to try to incorporate some of these routines and systems into your life because you're going to find that it opens up. It's very counterintuitive, but it opens up your
It
time.
takes,
Yeah.
as I tell my mamas, it takes a lot of training of unlearning all of the bad habits that we have learned as moms. I got to do this now. I got to do this now. I got to take care of this. For me, it was a coping skill. If I didn't take care of it right then, I was going to forget it because my head was
Mhm.
so crammed with so many other things.
Mhm.
And so I would stop what I was doing to go
Mhm.
take care of that. And then by the time I finished that, someone else would come with me or the phone would ring and something else came up. And then you've lost all of what you were doing before and it's time to go to soccer practice. And so that's just sat undone on the
Mhm.
counter and you have to come
Yeah.
home and clean up that mess
Yeah.
and start again another day. It really takes so much more energy and mental bandwidth to task switch back and forth like that.
Oh
And
my goodness. Yeah.
we're not built to do that. Really we're not. I think moms try to do it. We all want to be superwoman, but our brains are not built to do that. There's so much scientific, as a scientist, there's so much scientific evidence showing how unproductive that actually is.
Mhm.
And so it's really about unlearning that habit and then training yourself against what you want to do. I didn't want to say no
Mhm.
to these requests that my kids felt were urgent. I need to
Mhm.
sign this permission slip for their field trip next Friday right now. Well, no, I don't. It says on here it's due whatever day. I can put it in Friday prep and I will get to it on Friday. But when I finally trained myself, and I still have to train myself on it, to stop being so reactive, I realized that all of those things that I felt like were absolute immediate needs really weren't.
Yes.
It was just a almost an addiction to busyness, honestly, that I think so many of us have. We get so much satisfaction of accomplishing so much by being so busy, but so often at the end of the day, we sit down and feel as if we've accomplished nothing, right? I think we've
Yes.
talked about that.
Yes, we have. Yeah. No, it's very, very true. And what a great lesson you're giving your kids in time management and planning. They're watching you say no, and then you're not just saying no, you're like, look, this is due then. We have this much time since then. I have it marked for this other time because our kids are always watching us. And so I think that we accomplish a lot when we say no. Not only is it a lesson for our kids, but it's also, like you said, reprogramming for us and also proving to ourselves. Because I feel like this is a challenge. We're putting this out there for all you listeners. Pick one thing and try to say no to it and then see what happens. I
Yes.
bet it's not exactly what you're thinking. You're actually going to find a lot of progress from having said no.
Yes. After
Yeah.
you get over the initial anxiety and panic, make sure you write it down so you don't forget it. That was always my thing,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, yeah. Earmark it for some other time,
yes.
but prove to yourself you can say no. I think
Yeah.
that's a great challenge to put out there for my folks. Okay, so we're about rounding out the time that we have left. So there's a question I like to ask, and that is, as a mom, you're faced with this reality of having to balance nurturing your family and then nurturing your own goals and things that you want to get done as purely for yourself. So what is your definition of success in this season of life?
Man, that's so hard to answer in one way, isn't it? For me, it comes down to my core values, which is God and my family first and foremost. And so success for me right now is First, making sure that I'm spending time with the Lord every day, which to be honest, there are so many times that I have quiet time in the morning. There are so many times in the morning where I naturally want to say, I'm too busy. This is too much of a crunch this morning. I'll get to him later, right? And I have really felt convicted about that over the past year and really worked hard to always make him a priority first, no matter what. And secondly, with my family, I have really worked hard, especially over the past few years, to make sure that I'm spending some intentional time connecting with each of my boys individually. And it's a little different now because my boys are, in the messy middle. We're not toddlers. So I'm not on the floor playing Legos or cars with them. They're not really into the little toys anymore, which is different. My youngest is still kind of teetering there, but it's really for me, I'm having to learn how to connect with them on their level about things that are of interest to them. And that is soccer and professional sports and things that I don't know a lot about. And really having to train myself to listen intently and then learn to ask questions that further the conversation. And so when I can look at the end of the week and see that I've done that with each of the boys, and I've spent time with my spouse, having intentional time with him where I'm not distracted or talking just about everything going on with the boys and me, but just really connecting and then making sure that I'm getting in my time with God every morning. I feel like that's a win. That's success.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I can't think of two things that are more important than that. So
Yeah.
yeah, our time is almost up. And so thank you so much, Aubree. You shared so much valuable information to our listeners. Can you share where they can connect with you? And then I will also add all the information into the show notes.
Sure. Yeah, I do have a podcast. It's called Mom Intentional, and you can also find me at my website. It's www.momintentional.com. And from there, if you're interested in coaching, there's a way to get in touch with me there about coaching. And then I also have just a free Facebook community. It's pretty simple, Mom Intentional Club, and it's on Facebook. It's free. And that's really where I've been connecting to a lot of my listeners, and we're sharing a lot of fun tips and tricks and recipes and hacks. And so I would love to connect with you in any way.
Thank you. That's awesome. All right. We decided offline that it would be super fun to have you on again since you're interview number one, guest number one. So we'll make sure that happens, Aubree. And thank you so much again for making the time.
Thank you, Anoki. This has been so fun, and I'm excited to come back.
I hope today's episode will help you create time and freedom to pursue something you love to do. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe and tell other ambitious mamas about it. Who knows, you might even make a new friend by sharing a tip. It's all free. By the way, it would be amazing to hear what you think about the show when you leave a review. After all, my passion is to make this a great experience for you. Thank you for making my show a part of your day. I'll see you next week for another episode of the Solve for Mom podcast with Anoki Kapasi.